Let's go.
Let's go.
Another episode.
Another one.
With the famous Stacey Conte. Such a pleasure having you on. Let's just hop on in it right away.
Let's do it.
Let's hear your story. Like whatever you want to share, whether it's real estate or just about life. How's your journey going so far?
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
This is very exciting.
Absolutely.
I started my journey in real estate 10 years ago. I just invested in single family homes when I would move, rent out my house, and instead of selling it, and got a little bit experience being a landlord in that sense. And then in 2019, I got divorced and kind of had to restructure everything, start over. I had been following Grant Cardone for a while and followed a lot of his advice and explored multifamily, and bought my first multifamily property after my divorce, a 10 unit in Plant City, Florida. And ironically, the listing agent for that property is now my business partner in my fix and flip business. So cool. We created she's one of my best friends. She's like family to me, and now we're in business together. So that was really cool. But from there, I started learning about leverage and financing deals and just all the opportunities that real estate can provide and the doors that it can open. And I just continued to find deals to invest in. I got started in short-term rentals because a couple of the properties that I owned with my ex-husband, I had to refinance them, and we divided everything up and refinanced them, put them in my name. Well, interest rates were different. So now my mortgage and all my expenses were not even covering what the long-term tenants were paying. So I really liked the properties. They're new construction in a great little beach town, and I didn't want to have to sell them. So I got creative and found midterm rentals and started doing midterm corporate rentals. And then I would have these gaps in between because, they don't line up back to back when people are staying that long. So I had these gaps in my calendar, and I said, oh, well, let me try putting it on Airbnb and seeing what happens. So I put my first one up on Airbnb. I went and in like a weekend furnished it and cleaned it myself and realized I definitely have to outsource that. Because my first review was actually bad.
Oh, wow.
So that, a lot of people get discouraged by that, but I took the constructive criticism and figured out a way to make it better. But I really liked the short-term rental game. So from there, I had 2 others in the same community. I turned those into short-term rentals. And then when COVID hit, I was under contract for a 20-unit multifamily. And the lender shut down the pipeline, said, we're not doing any deals. And so I lost that property. And so I had to, all right, on to the next. What do I want to do next? And I went and looked at these properties in Fort Myers Beach that were marketed under the multifamily umbrella, but they were short-term rentals. And I was like, oh, this is a great little beach area. I love this concept. And I didn't end up going with one of those properties that I came to town to see, but I found another property that was under contract twice because of the COVID financing, all that craziness, fell out of contract, and I picked it up at a really great price. I furnished it, turned it into a family-friendly vacation rental, the Ice Pop Inn. It has ice pop murals everywhere and free ice pops, gumball machine, and my kids love going there. Okay. So that's kind of like the property I really fell in love with short-term rentals because it was creating that experience. So I was like, okay, this is what's different. You're not just renting out, your nice condo to business people, but you're creating an experience for a family. And it's very addicting.
I bet.
Sure.
Yeah. So I do like the hospitality side of it. And I like when families message that they had a great time and, they created different memories that, will be long lasting. And then I get to share those memories when I take my kids too. So I design everything to be very family friendly. And it's been a lot of fun.
I love that. I want to rewind just a little bit
A lot to
because
unpack.
I was just like blown away with the pivot that you made, after the divorce. You're just like, you know what, I'm going to keep on going. And then, the pivot with COVID, that's what DNA of a real investor is, that's what it takes to be able to be fluid and pivot whenever things are not going as projected. Right. So kudos to you for making so many switches and still having tons of success. I do love the idea of short-term rentals having that identity and creating that experience. That's where you really get the premium returns on your investment, right? So where's your portfolio at right now and STRs?
I have 11 up and running. And then I have a motel in construction. It holds a motel license, but it was being operated as more of a weekly rental type transient. The previous landlord didn't put a penny into the property, so it needed a lot. And I'm really excited for everything that's going on there. My goal with that is to turn it into short-term rentals that I can operate in the town with the motel license, and have it look and feel like a motel, but marketed exclusively on Airbnb and run contactless. So not having an on-site person that you traditionally go front desk, check in, get a key card. It's all going to be run remotely.
Love that. How did you find that deal?
It was on the market. It was on MLS.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A 10 unit?
What's that?
It was a 10 unit?
12.
12.
Yeah. But it was just a scary, it was a scary scenario.
Yeah. You had to be in the game for 10 years to take on that behemoth, right?
You had to
Right.
see the vision of it.
Sure.
So at first glance, it definitely wasn't a turnkey property. It wasn't even just a light rehab.
Right.
It was a full, I rewired the entire building. I replumbed the entire building. I did cash for keys.
Wow.
It was,
Everything
I
under the
tented
sun.
the building. Yeah. So it needed everything. So something I'm good at is I have a high risk tolerance. So it was definitely a project that I saw, okay, this has a very high potential, but it's also a high risk. But I felt confident that I could power through that, and I have the team to support that and put all the pieces in place.
So how did you finance it then? Because obviously, has to be a cash deal or private money because it wasn't, in a capacity to be financed. So
Right.
walk us through that process.
I did private money. I did a private lender. The listing agent passed on the lead, and it actually was a great connection. I now do all of my fix and flips with the same lender, and he's been fabulous. I mean, I brought him a deal one time on a Friday, and I'm like, gotta close Monday.
Wow.
And he got it done.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
a good lender.
Yeah.
Keep him around.
Yeah.
So
Bless
my bridge loan is due in July. I could extend it, but right now I'm working like full time on a cash out refi for my next step. So it's there's so many different ways that you can finance these type of properties and so many challenges because I'll have just been opened. You know, I'm about 30 to 45 days from opening, and most banks and lenders want to see a long seasoning period, like 6 months of seasoning, which is, you know, being open, having numbers, showing the bookings and the revenue. And I won't have that. And I don't want to I could extend my bridge loan, but I really want to lock in a long-term debt because of where the market is right now. I don't want to have that up in the air, especially with my other properties I'll have due in the next 5 years. So it's a full-time job.
I imagine.
Yeah. Figuring out how to finance these deals properly and working with lenders and sifting through to find the right match.
And so who was on your team helping you? Because you mentioned that you had a team, you know, handling the project. So who was all involved?
I have my business partner who's project managing. This is not one of our LLC properties, but I took her on as project manager. And my boyfriend's doing a lot of the construction. I went through a GC and a plumber that turns out did work on my property for 3 months and actually had no license.
Wow.
Was not a real plumber. So I've just learned so many things along the way that you wouldn't even
imagine
think that you needed to learn. So it definitely, construction is not my side. It's Betsy, my partner's side. And I've accelerated my learning curve a lot with this project for sure.
Yeah, normal single family flip. Now you're just like, oh, that's like a piece of cake.
Yeah. That's basically turnkey now.
Yeah, it's like, that's nothing.
That's funny.
So you have that going on. What else? What other fun endeavors are you dabbling in?
Well, I have 3 kids, so I've had them actually full time the last year. So, you know, everything that a mother does, all of the sports. My kids are 5, 7, and 9. So,
Another full job.
Yeah.
Full-time job.
Yes. But one of my goals as a mom is to incorporate them into my business and what I do, because I grew up with 2 parents that were college graduates, nurse, engineer. I didn't know anything about owning your own business or using leverage. You know, my parents paid for everything with cash because you didn't want to have a credit card bill. And they were just very conservative and, you know, financially stable, but conservative. They didn't have any real estate investments. And I never really knew that I kind of just always thought you were like born an entrepreneur or you were like born to be a college graduate and work a 9 to 5. And I just never thought of my life anything different than go to college, graduate, get a job, and work at that job. Like I never knew there was another option. So I want to like show my kids all of the options. So if they want to go to college and be a teacher, or they want to go to college and go be a doctor, or they want to not go to college and work a trade or be an investor or start up their own restaurant or business, I want them to know all the options and, you know, be able to make those decisions because they have all the information.
Oh, cool.
So how did you become an entrepreneur then, being raised by parents who were in the, you know, the 9 to 5 corporate engineer and nurse? What made you go down a different path?
My ex-husband was very successful, and we lived in a community with basically all entrepreneurs, and being around those people and, you know, just going to the clubhouse and having dinner with them and their family and, you know, their kids hanging out. I'm like, these people are no different. They're, a lot of times like it's like a celebrity. You think like there's some magic around them, and then you meet them and you're like, oh, you're just a regular person that is
Right.
an actor, or a regular person that's a doctor. And, I also just retired from my corporate job where I was in medical sales. I worked with doctors, and, that was another thing. I was like, doctors are just people that went to medical school and they're very smart and save lives and do amazing things. But at the end of the day, they don't have a magical power. They're just a person that works hard and knows a lot about what they need to know a lot about. And so just kind of realizing that and learning that, it made me say, well, I could do that too. I never knew I could, but why can't I? All these other people I'm around are doing it, and it just kind of opened my eyes to that it's possible.
So congratulations on, resigning from your W-2. That's
Absolutely.
a huge
That's
step.
big.
That's amazing. How long ago was that?
Last week.
Oh my
Wow.
God. Let's go.
Fresh on the
Tuesday.
press. Let's go.
Tuesday. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I want to unpack that just a little bit. Like, so did you have it all mapped out? Like, were you trying to reach X amount of rentals or X amount of income before you made the plunge of chunking up the deuces? Like, how did you get to that point?
Well, I felt like I had gone back and forth with it for a while because I was juggling everything. So, I was working my W-2 job. I was growing my short-term rental business. I have property management on my long-term rentals. I was able to manage my role in the fix and flip business. But it really got to a place where I felt like I had to make the decision, do I want to invest more in myself, or do I want to continue to have more of that feeling of security with the W-2 job, getting car, health insurance, phone, all of these ancillary benefits outside the pay, which is really good in medical sales. And I was able to juggle both of them. So I had both of the incomes. So whenever I was going to take the next step, I would be losing income and, not immediately making that back. But I felt like the time was right. And my W-2 job, I had my annual review and they're like, yeah, we're not giving you any raise. And ironically, at the time I was ranked #1 sales rep in the country out of 275. Wow. And we're seeing the most inflation we've ever seen. And to me, it was just like a sign that it was the push I needed, because I know I'm worth at least a cost of living raise. And if they're not seeing that, then we're not on the same page.
It's a good way to look at it too.
That's my favorite part of being a business owner, right? You're in control. So you mentioned that people weren't appreciative of your results, right? So you're #1 and you get 0 raise. But as soon as you have control and you own the company, you make the rules. And so that's the biggest, I think, advantage of being a business owner and running your own show.
And just the freedom. I mean, you have 3 kids.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you guys to spend so much
more time.
quality time.
Yeah. My kids are like, oh, we could take the bus home now. And, it's like little things. But as a mom and a single mom, working so much and, everything my kids have been through, you have a lot of mom guilt and am I working too much? Am I not working enough? Am I going to miss something at school? And so it's definitely the right move.
How did you juggle it all? So going back to when you were still working, how are you managing, all of these different time commitments?
I think that's like my superpower as an individual. I'm smart, but I'm not the smartest. I'm social, but I'm not the most social. I'm not like the best at math or the best at, underwriting, but I feel like I have a very wide bandwidth of what I can take on and process and juggle. And in my mind, file it. And I'm very good at time management. So I would have a long drive time with my W-2. I'd drive over to Lakeland, Bartow, and instead of using that drive time to call a friend and gossip or chit chat, I would call lenders. I would call, wholesalers. I would call, the city, research the short-term rental rules. I would use that time to maximize. So it wasn't taking away from my W-2 job because I wasn't missing meetings because of it, but I just was able to maximize the drive time in different areas and
efficiency.
Yeah.
Incredible. Really maximizing it. I mean,
inspiring.
For
sure.
Yeah. My man, Aiden is
still in it.
Yeah. He's still in the W-2, but he's on his way for sure. So
on my way.
Aww.
You mentioned a lot of the reasons why I'm still in it, right? So you have the health insurance, you have the security, the good pay, but you also mentioned the reason why I'm not a fan of it, which is no control. You can be performing and then your company says, hey, sorry, but we don't have any budget for your role.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, well, at what point are you going to go and create your own path? And so I'm kind of in that in-between stage. And I use the same strategy as you in terms of, when I'm at work, I'm listening to educational videos, listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
And, if I'm driving somewhere, I always have, bigger pockets on and kind of soaking up real estate, right?
Bigger pockets.
And so to your point, it's really about kind of using your W-2 to kind of leapfrog into your next step and your next journey. So
yeah,
I love it.
So you and I'm going to take another pivot. Like you and I off camera, offline, we talked a little bit about giving back in philanthropy. And you said you had something kind of special that you're working on or already been working on with single mothers. Do you want to maybe touch on that and kind of share with what you're going on?
Yeah, well, it's not officially in the works, but it's something I want to do. And when I saw your comment, I was like, oh wow, that's been yeah. But I have a lady who babysits for me, kind of helps around my house. She's not a citizen of the US, so she can't really find a traditional job. So her situation's just kind of unique. And she was going through a really hard time in her marriage with her kids. And she didn't know what direction things were going in. And she was like, oh, I just wish I could just have a getaway and get away from it all. And I was like, well, why don't you just go stay at one of my Airbnbs, because she knows I do the Airbnbs and stuff. And she was like it was so touching, her response to that, because
it's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's for me, it's a couple days, it's no big deal, but it meant the world to her that she could kind of just go and clear her mind. And
incredible.
Yeah. And I was like, we have this opportunity because we're fortunate and, successful business people that it's something that's very small, but it could mean a lot to someone else. So when you said the families, I was like, I relate to single moms because I went through a bad, divorce, domestic violence, everything. So that has a special place in my heart. So that's why for me, I would like to do it in the form of single moms going through hard times, but I don't know how that looks like, how that structure it, but if you do, let's figure it out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really is amazing.
I'd be down to help for sure. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to just have all the money, right? But once you get to the top, how do you find happiness? What do you do with it after that?
Yeah.
So I don't want to wait until I have all the money. I want to start planning right now and making an impact during the journey, right?
Mm-hmm.
You hear the cliche saying enjoy the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we should be giving back during the journey too.
Yeah.
So kudos to you again. That's awesome. Love it.
JB is great about giving back. He's always always at the meetups, always on the show, giving gems and really just helping people. And so both of you guys are inspiring for sure, at least to me.
Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you.
So let's talk about maybe outside of real estate and business, So you are a single mother, you're juggling so much. How do you find sense of clarity and peace? What's your getaway? You're helping other people out and find their getaway. How does Stacey relax and enjoy her time when she's not juggling everything?
Yeah.
Which seems like never,
right?
Because you're always working.
Yeah, I feel like I do all of the work, and the busyness is in a way like comforting. I feel like I have a purpose and empowered working and running my business. Church is another area I find a lot of peace. I try to go to church at least every week as best we can. And then at night, with my kids, we pray together. So that is, I feel like even though it's small durations of time, it's impactful time. And one of my goals actually with retiring from corporate is to do a full spa day once a month, just to relax and work on myself and take that downtime, because what we do in real estate is very stressful. Sometimes you just get so used to it that you don't realize how stressful it is until you're talking to someone that's not in the real estate world. And you're like, oh yeah, you just had to install 4 new AC units over the weekend. And we have 2 closings this week. We're trying to line up. We got to get the units installed. It's got to pass inspection. We got to close on that so we can use the money to then close on the next property. And it's, these are big deals and a lot of money on the line. And it's very stressful. So I'm like, I need to do it for myself. It's just take a day where I can go and have a spa day, and I'll probably end up listening to books on tape and things like that. But
there you go.
It'll be my time to just kind of rejuvenate and focus on myself, my goals, time to reflect. There's a lot, a lot of people in real estate and on social media, always talk about all of the positives. And I think where I can bring the most value to people is by sharing the things that went wrong. Because you had flipped a house and made all this money and bought a multifamily and raised rents and made all this money, but it's not that easy. That's the potential, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes into that, and a lot that, at least in every deal I've done, that goes wrong, and things you have to pivot and navigate through and be resilient with. And I think that's where there's a lot of value, because, if I just thought everything should go smooth and then you run into all these hiccups, I would feel like a failure instead of feeling like this is just part of the process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, we learn from all of the mistakes. That's where the growth is. So
I feel like I almost don't learn too much when I'm successful, right? Because it went well. I'm not really thinking back on, you know, what was going on. But then when something goes wrong, you kind of step back and you're like, whoa, you know, what should I do differently next time, right?
Yeah.
So,
and it's important to experience that so you don't have this like false sense of security, right? Oh, cool. Like this is replicatable and I can continue to do this without mistakes. But there's a lot of moving parts and it is very stressful at times. I can only imagine some of the stuff that you're going through because you're taking on massive projects. So Very,
Yeah,
very true.
we have a 4-unit fix and flip, and the appraiser flagged our we had window units and then baseboard heaters, and the appraiser, of all people, flagged it and said, I'm not approving the appraisal because this is not up to code, because the way the baseboard heaters, they're not hardwired. They were, I guess, essentially a plug-in. And we went to the city and we're like, does this meet code? The city's like, we don't care. This is fine. But the appraiser will not pass our appraisal without
Interesting.
hardwired. So we went with mini splits. So that's we all weekend. The mini splits were getting installed and electrical ran. And now we're trying to get that inspected, have the appraiser come back out and inspect it. But long story short, I didn't know that appraisers even had that ability. So
I didn't know either.
Yeah. News to me.
yeah, so it's big learning.
I thought that was
Big
more of
learning
like
curve.
the inspector's role,
Right.
Why does an appraiser
we have
care
a clean
about?
4-point.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because like insurance should care,
Right.
but why is the appraiser caring about the type of electrical work
Yeah.
done in your
I
property?
think there's a lot of everyone right now is feeling a lot of pressure in real estate.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to make sure that they're dotting their I's and crossing their T's. And I'm sure she's doing her job the way she feels like it needs to be done to protect her license and protect her company. So it's definitely learned something this week.
Times of uncertainty right now. Couldn't agree more. What do you think gave you the confidence to do a deal like that? You know, because people do single families, maybe a duplex, maybe a triplex, but where do you think that next step is, right?
Well, I did my first flip ever was a single family in Windermere. I guess it would be considered more of like a high-end flip. And I basically broke even on that one because of my holding costs. And so again, I was like, okay, well, some people pay for coaching, some people pay for classes. You know, I just got a really great lesson and I broke even. So, okay. But I looked, okay, what went wrong here? And it was my holding costs. So I didn't have it rented out. I wasn't collecting any rent, and it sat on the market for a long time. It probably wasn't marketed the best. I used a friend as the listing agent originally. And so when I went into business with my now partner, we decided that we're going to only do multifamily, so small multifamily, duplex, triplex, quadplex. And the rationale being that we can collect rent at least on some of the units while we rehab, place renters, and we would always be having money coming in while rehabbing. And then we would sell and market to investors as our end buyer. And we were able to, this buyer is getting like close to a 20% cash on cash return. Like it's a
Amazing.
killer
Wow.
property in Lakeland. So, there's a huge demand for rent, especially at affordable rates. And it's a really, really cool project. And the before and after is really amazing.
Awesome.
I
Yeah.
bet. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's certainly, levels from going from like 2, 3, 4 units to the next level of 10 units, 12 units. I think, where did that mindset come from? Was it the experience with the 2 to 4 units that you've had success with, that you had before you wanted to move over into 10 units plus? Because that's a scary feat, like.
And some people never do it.
Yeah, and
they never graduate from single family.
Yeah, so
right?
like I feel like there's a true barrier of entry, or a level, if you will, right, that you have to like almost pass to feel comfortable to move on to that next level.
So I guess it's all perception. And, I mentioned I listen to a lot of Grant Cardone, but if you own a single family or you own a 10 unit, your process and your work for the most part is very similar. So you're just replicating the process and replicating what you're doing now just on, it's like owning one single family or 10 single family, you're doing the same thing just over and over. So in my perspective, there's less risk with multifamily and less risk fix and flipping multifamily or buy and hold multifamily, because now you have, instead of one renter and one scenario that could go wrong, if you have a single family and they lose their job, they can't pay rent or whatever happens, now you have nothing coming in and you still have your full mortgage due. Where if you have a 10 unit and you even have half of your renters not pay, you still have half of your rent coming in. So the way I see it is there's less risk in multifamily because you could still cover a lot of your expenses with only a portion of your units being rented out. And from the fix and flip side, we see it as an opportunity to, we like working with investors, and that's inspiring to us. So selling to an investor, a lot of the investors are like first time investors. But also if the market ever turned and we needed to hold these properties, they're also great properties to hold because as multifamily, they're cash flowing really well.
I bet.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. You hit it on the head. Like if one property does do bad, you're stuck with that one single family.
Yeah.
That you have this problem in it, or you had the wrong projections for whatever reason, right? But that same scenario, you have 9 other properties that are performing well.
Yeah.
To get you out of that predicament. Yeah.
So you're in both the short-term rental game and the long-term rental game.
Mm-hmm.
Pros and cons of each.
So they're pretty different, at least from my perspective. My long-term rentals, my business partners, my property manager on them, I don't get. I know my strengths and weaknesses, and it's not in managing long-term rentals. Now the short-term rental side is more of what I enjoy, more of what I'm good at. So I self-manage those and I enjoy it. I like going in and the whole process from finding the property, identifying it, seeing my vision, executing my vision, and then listing it, dealing with the guests. I like that whole process. There's definitely more upside financially on short-term rentals. For example, I acquired a property last February in Indian Rocks Beach, 4-unit, block from the water, and each unit was being rented out for $1,100. It was just recently updated inside. It was an adorable property, but all long-term leases, $1,100. And there was just small tweaks that needed to be done. And when I walked in, I'm like, I could see the changes that I would make. And I saw the vision. And the property at the time didn't even appraise. I had to cover, this was like before the market, before the bidding wars and everything. So I was like, I know what it could do. So I covered the gap, and I actually did a cash out refi less than a year later, and it appraised for significantly more, with those just small tweaks and like the design and the setup of the property. But I'm making close to 8 to 10 times what I was with long term. Wow. Yeah. Now it's unique because it's a beach, so if it was inland, there wouldn't be that much upside, but there's definitely, if you can find these little pockets of areas, there's a huge potential for short-term rentals.
Wanted to ask about, and feel free to not want to talk about this, but the private money play that, you said you found through your now partner, right? How big of an impact is your growth attributed to that private money lender?
I guess, I mean, I wouldn't be able to be doing a lot of the fix and flips, and that deal I may or may not have been able to close on. I typically don't ever give up. So if they said no, I would have just continued. But the biggest thing with that lender in particular is they don't require an appraisal. So on a lot of these wholesale deals, you have to act quick. Otherwise, there's a line of actual cash buyers. So you get to play in the cash buyer space with leverage. And that's a game changer. So this lender in particular, without requiring an appraisal, really allows us to act like a true cash buyer, because there's really nothing holding us back from closing. So it just opens the door to more opportunities and putting in offers that are more likely to be accepted and just being more aggressive.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I asked, because we've heard countless times, once you have a good private money lender on your team, it is a game changer. Mm-hmm. It really sets the bar really high, and you can be as aggressive as you want, and lock up these deals, because not everyone has that opportunity and that privilege, right?
Yeah.
You can only go so far with your own money too, right? Doing your own deals and using your own financing. So comes to a point where if you want to scale, you got to start leveraging other people's time, other people's money. Mm-hmm. And so those two factors we've seen to be a trend in anyone that's really successful out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would imagine that you probably have another advantage when looking at multifamily and hotels, motels, right? Because you can convert them into STR versus your traditional, investor is probably going to look at, normal long-term rents, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, that's why this motel was on the market and sitting. Yeah. Because if you went to tour it, it was a lot. It was a lot. I was like, I don't think we're ever going to be able to get this place in vacant to, I mean, we needed to, first thing we did was tent it. It was sadly not a habitable place to even rent. Although it was, so, that's kind of where my partner came in, and that's her strength, is she talked to all these renters. We called up all the other motels in the area and found places for them to go. We paid for, their first couple of weeks, gave them money, and a cash for keys to help them with the transition. And we had the whole place vacant. I think it was a week after closing. It was lightning speed.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So what about your partner? Did you see, was it right away? You're like, oh my gosh, we work so well in tandem. Was she the missing link to all of your, things that you're good at? How did that come about? Because I think having private money and then having a good partner, that's all the team that you really need.
Yeah. Well, the first multifamily deal, she was the listing agent. So I had my agent as the buyer, and, the first time I went to see the property, she was in there, and she had bought it with her partner at the time as a fix and flip multifamily. So she was, turning the units, and I just saw her in there working, getting stuff done. And I was like, wow,
another woman boss.
Yeah. And but things I know nothing about. So I was so impressed. And the way she handled the sale and the transition, she was very fair and ethical. And, you know, even after we closed, if there were some loose ends not tied up, and she made sure everything was taken care of, and you know, she didn't have to at the time. So I attempted to self-manage at first and very quickly realized that was not my strength. And so I called her up and I was like, hey, yeah. And so she property managed for me for over a year. And, you know, we just kind of got to know each other and build a level of trust and became friends. And, you know, we're very similar in the sense that we love what we do. We love real estate. We love talking about real estate. We are hard workers. You know, we'd be on the phone talking about our properties till 1 a.m. And, but then our differences are that loves the construction side of things, and she is, she can work with like facilitate the construction side and work with like the construction people where I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's very apparent. And, you know, it's easier to take advantage of someone who doesn't know what they're talking about than someone who does. And, you know, she doesn't like the lending side and doesn't like going out and talking to lenders all day and finding the right financing deals. So it was like our opposites align, you know, and they create kind of the whole, everything's covered.
Awesome.
How important do you think that is, like being opposites, right? So kind of being good at different things. Is that what you're looking for in a partnership?
100%. Like if we were both good at the same thing, there'd be a huge gap.
Right.
You know, our business is named Sugar and Spice Developments.
I love that.
That's awesome.
I'm the sugar and she's the spice. And when, you know, we play good cop, bad cop when needed. And it's a good mix, you know. So some people get along great with her and they don't like me. And some people like me and they don't like her. And that's fine. We don't care. It's just however we need to get it done.
Sugar and spice taking over the world. I love it.
That's awesome. I love it. Let's see.
So going back to our earlier conversation, why did you pick real estate, right? So you kind of learned that you didn't want to go down the 9-to-5 corporate America route, but there's so many options out there. So why real estate?
I saw the different opportunities and the doors that it could open long term. So there's a lot of businesses that you could open and operate, and it can provide probably a greater return on investment immediately. But I like the long-term play and the whole picture of real estate. The tax strategy involved, which probably everyone's still learning about. I don't know if you could totally master that. And just the appreciation over time, having it be a legacy for my children, the opportunities to incorporate my children in the business. You know, I take them to my properties for a variety of reasons. They've lived a very privileged life, and I want them to see that that's not the way everyone gets to live. And I want them to know the other side of things and be exposed to all of that. And then I also want them to know a strong work ethic. So like they come and they help, and they are, you know, they're put to work in the capacity that they can handle. And then I want them to see me working, and I want them to be inspired by what I do, and show them the different opportunities, you know, that are available outside of just like the typical college route. So just kind of everything aligned to real estate.
Inspiring.
Very, yeah. I mean, you've impressed me multiple times just through this podcast, but I mean, you are tenacious, you are super strong, and like, yeah, you're raising three hell amazing kids. Like, I'm excited for you guys. Yeah, no, truthfully. If you weren't doing real estate, what would you be doing? Assuming that you wouldn't be in medical sales. Like if you could choose any job on the planet, what would you choose?
Wow. Good question. Well, I have another business.
Of course you do.
Of course.
I sell luxury handbags on Instagram. I actually started in the fashion resale when I was pregnant on maternity leave because I needed to be doing something. And I was like, I had newborn baby at home and I'm like, oh, let me put my clothes on eBay. And it turned into, I found a niche. At the time it was selling like Victoria's Secret pink clothes. They were really trendy at the time. And I was able to scale that on Facebook and eBay. And was it 2 years ago, I had bought this, what I thought was gorgeous Gucci bag. And I went to show my sisters and it was like this big B with all the gemstones on it. I'm pretty flashy. And my sisters were like, that is the ugliest bag I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, what? Really? I'm like, I love it. And they're like, no, that's hideous. And I was like, I just bought it. Let me just see what it's worth. And I was like, oh, I got a good deal on it. Let me just see, the business person in me is always like, well, everything's for sale at the right price.
Right.
So
Flip everything.
I put it up and immediately it sold. And I was like,
wow.
oh, wow. I was like, oh, there's a Gucci outlet in town. And so I went and bought a couple things, put them up, sold, and it just kind of took off from there. So I do that on Instagram now. I flip designer handbags.
Flip Nation.
And I love like flipping stuff and, but I also I'm a girl. I love fashion. I love clothes and purses. So, if I have some downtime, I'll go and shopping, but working
at the same time.
Yeah. So it's a hobby that I turned into a business.
Best of both worlds.
For real. That's funny. I love that.
Because that could be an expensive hobby if you weren't turning it into a business.
Yeah.
So, nice.
So you're involved in a lot of different types of real estate. What's your favorite asset class of all the different types that you're involved with?
I like my beach properties, short-term rentals. For a lot of reasons. The beach, there's limited beaches. You can't develop more real estate around most beach areas because they're already developed. So there's always going to be that supply and demand. So I feel like buying in those areas as a long-term play, you're insulated from the market ups and downs. There's always a demand for people to go to the beach, even if you're, even when COVID hit, my beach properties, people were still going to, even from just in town, because, everyone wanted to just get a little getaway. If the market turns, I feel like instead of going on fancy international trips, people just, go to the beach. So there's always going to be a demand for the beach. And it's also just, nice to be able to go there too when the properties are open. So it serves a lot of purposes.
Personal component to it. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would your advice be for someone just getting started in the real estate game?
Don't rush. I think a lot of people, when they decide they want to get into real estate, they're like, and I get like this too, like if I sell a property and I need to buy I need to buy something. And the ability to act quickly, but waiting for the right property, waiting for the right opportunity, especially in today's market where everything just skyrocketed in price. I think for myself, when I look at short-term rentals, I always underwrite conservatively as long-term rental as a backup, whether that's because the economy, people can't travel, or something like COVID happens, like always having the backup plan as a long-term rental, regulations changing. There's so many things that could potentially happen. So underwriting very conservatively, but when you do find a property, acting quick and being aggressive to get it, but don't just rush into buying a property because you want to get started in Airbnb and overpay for something or not find the right situation.
Love it.
Great
and
advice.
I say that because I'm very impatient. So like I always have to take a step back and go, okay, we need to make sure this is the right property, and you do all your due diligence, and it's not just because you're eager.
Or you pull a JB and buy 12 in the first year.
Well, they could all be the right ones. I mean,
They are all the right ones.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Seem good so far.
So far, so good. The blue gem of the show.
One more thing, I was just curious. If there's a bunch of wholesalers and agents that are out there listening to this podcast, what are you looking to purchase right now? Like, what's your buy box? You want to, plug that in real quick, and maybe some people can funnel you some deals.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I love the motel conversion. So small properties that could be boutique motels. Any properties for fix and flips that are 2 to 4 units. Any multifamily larger that need rehabs. So.
Is this all in Florida, or are you?
Oh, yes.
Just in Florida.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I only buy in Florida, really excluding the Panhandle. Doesn't really feel like Florida.
Fair enough.
A lot of people say that.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Fair enough. How are you marketing? Are you doing any direct to seller or anything right now? Like, how are you getting your deals?
Through mostly wholesalers.
Through wholesalers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Last thing that you want to leave with the audience. It can be anything, any type of advice or wisdom or experience that you've had in life in general, or in real estate that you just want to share with the audience.
I think I want people to know that like it's possible, especially as like a woman or a single mom. A lot of times we feel like we don't fit the box of a real estate investor, or, it's overwhelming to think of how to even get started. So I'm always like, I always love talking to other women or people that are just trying to get started in real estate to share my story and share the mistakes I've made and kind of cut the learning curve. And like, this is the shortcut. So I think just knowing that it's like, there's no, like, there's no magic, like anyone can do it. You don't need any type of formal education. If you partner with the right people, you don't need any money. There's just a lot of opportunities in real estate if you're willing to be resilient and work hard and be a sponge to all the learnings. But there's no barrier. Like, you can't just go out tomorrow and be like, hey, I want to be a doctor. You got to go through a whole bunch of school, and you do have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into education. But the barrier to entry in real estate is very low. So I love to see like other women and single moms have success, and kind of break the mold of what the typical real estate investor people think of. So I just hope to like connect with more people breaking into the industry and share ways that they can make it happen.
It's so funny too, because like statistically, it makes more sense for women to be investors because like statistically, women make better decisions than men. You know, like they ran a study from like what would the wife do versus the husband do in this scenario of an investment. They ran this study over and over again with multiple, hundreds of couples, right? And the women outperformed the men from an investment decision standpoint over and over and over again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
That's cool.
it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Women are, detail oriented and tenacious. You can, deliver a baby, right? That takes incredible power, right? So it does make sense. So I would love to see more women enter the space as well. And, you're a true testament that anyone can have success, so you're an inspiration to so many people. And I can't wait for this episode to drop out. And, I think
Couldn't agree more.
yeah, I think everyone's going to be knocking down your door and asking for advice and,
Right.
and just, inspiring to so many people.
Oh.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for
appreciate it,
having
inspiring.
me.
for sure.